In this video, we're going to examine the grievance procedure of Lucy Letby. So before we go into that, I'll just remind people what had occurred to Lucy Letby by the time that her grievance procedure commenced. So we discussed this at some length in the videos that are on the screen now, which provide a full timeline to everything that occurred at the Countess of Chester at around this period, which was between, roughly speaking, June 2015 and May 2017. Lucy had been essentially targeted by, certainly I would say bullied, it's fair to say, by consultants on the unit who perhaps had some concerns that there had been a spike in deaths. Not everyone agrees that this was their motivation. There is some debate and discussion about this. But what is certain is that Dr. Stephen Berry was the ringleader of the consultants, and he was very determined to have Lucy Letby removed from the unit. So we begin this process with Lucy having been removed from the unit, and she later finds out that the consultants had suspicions and were circulating rumours that she'd been deliberately harming babies on the neonatal unit. So not unreasonably on this basis, she felt that she had a grievance, and so she commenced this grievance procedure. So the Trust defines the grievance procedure in this document. The Trust acknowledges that from time to time, a member of staff or group of staff may feel aggrieved by an incident that has occurred, and you could certainly understand why Lucy would feel aggrieved by this. A decision made or a condition imposed which affects them personally. In these situations, it is important that the issues are explored fully, fairly, swiftly, and appropriate action taken where necessary. Staff are encouraged to discuss any issues informally with their immediate supervisor in order to allow for a speedy resolution if this is possible. Where informal discussions have taken place without a satisfactory outcome, or where a more formal response is required, then the grievance procedure set out below will be invoked. The Trust grievance procedure complies with the ACAS Code of Practice on Disciplinary and Grievance Procedures. All meetings will be held in a manner consistent with the Trust values. A grievance is a problem or concern that an employee has about their work, working conditions, or relationships with colleagues. A collective grievance is a grievance brought by a group of staff. Grievances will not be heard if the complaint is lodged later than 12 weeks from the date of the alleged incident. So that would explain why Lucy has entered into this process, because she knows if I don't do this within a certain period of time, I'll never be able to raise a grievance again. For all she knew, she was going to go back onto the unit and then she would need to have working relationships with her colleagues, including the consultants. And how could this occur if these grievances hadn't been aired? I think this was her attempt to clear the air and have it acknowledged that she wasn't in the wrong, so that she could have a plausible, credible position for working on the unit going forward. Perhaps that was naive, but when you see that written in black and white that she has 12 weeks to do this, then you can perhaps understand why she chose that path. If a grievance can be more appropriately dealt with under a different procedure, staff will be advised that this is the case. The examples below indicate where it is inappropriate to follow the grievance procedure as other mechanisms or trust procedures are in place. Dismissal or any disciplinary matters, any matters for which national procedures or agreements apply, matters relating to job evaluation, matters relating to the trust's attendance management policy, complaints of harassment and bullying, disclosures made under the Trust Whistleblowing Public Interest Disclosure Act policy. So I certainly think this could have come under the umbrella of harassment and bullying, but perhaps there weren't other procedures in place. But nevertheless, Lucy, with rumours circulating that she was harming babies and no evidence, as we've established previously and as we'll see discussed in this video, to actually back up those allegations, it was entirely reasonable of her to initiate this grievance procedure. There's a bit of a comment here about mediation as well. An independent third party or mediator can sometimes help resolve grievance issues. I'm not going to read this in its entirety. I'll just mention that for Lucy's grievance procedure, Dr. Chris Green, who was involved in pharmacy at the hospital was chairing the process, as we'll see in this video. I'm not sure why Dr. Chris Green particularly was chosen, but I'm not sure even that this was his position. I think he had a slightly more junior position in pharmacy at the time. But he certainly, in my view, did a good job and was very honest about his findings. So this was all initiated by this letter that was written by Lucy Letby. Further to a letter that was submitted to the Trust on the 2nd of September 2016 by my RCN Royal College of Nursing representative, I now wish to register a grievance on the grounds of victimisation and discrimination in regards to my current situation. Please find below a list of grievances concerns that I have and that I wish to be reviewed and answered by the Trust. On the 14th of July 2016, that should say, not 2106, I attended a meeting with Sian Williams, Deputy Director of Nursing, and was informed that I would be required to undertake supervised practice and that I would need to redo competencies. I was informed that this process was going to be followed for other staff. On the 18th of July 2016, during a different meeting, I agreed to be redeployed as the neonatal unit was unable to undertake supervised practice due to staffing levels. I was informed this would be until an external review had taken place regarding the increased mortality rates. I am now aware that this process has not been followed for other staff, and I wish to know why. The review has taken place and I have been interviewed by them, and there was no mention of any wrongdoing by myself. I would therefore like an explanation as to why I have been redeployed and singled out. Following an interview with the reviewers last week, I have been informed that it will take up to 8 weeks for the report to be complete. I wish the Trust to inform myself what is expected to happen with me during this period, as I am keen to return to work on the neonatal unit as soon as possible. I am now aware that some consultants have raised issues to the Trust's executive team regarding myself and my professional responsibilities. Again, I wish to know what these allegations are and how the Trust is dealing with this. I wish to be informed of any evidence that the Trust may have in regards to the above, and if there is to be an investigation into my practice, then on what grounds. I now feel it is only right that as a Trust employee that you are all made aware of how I currently feel as a member of staff. And then there's a final little passage here. 8 weeks ago, I was made aware there was going to be a review and I agreed to be redeployed. Every week I was informed, let's wait for the review before a decision is made. I now feel completely victimised and feel I am being made a scapegoat of. So, in a theme that I will discuss now as well, we don't have all the pages and we don't have all the text from Lucy's letter. It just tails off and we never get to see that from the Thirlwell inquiry. As you'll see on the screen now, we don't have all the pages for the grievance procedure and we don't have all the pages for countless documents from the Thirlwell inquiry. And I also know for a fact that certain documents from the Thirlwell inquiry were never published and made public. One would have to guess as to why that was the case. I won't offer any theories. I don't know why they weren't published. That you can obviously draw certain conclusions. All I can say is that there's a lot of stuff redacted in this inquiry for what is a public inquiry that was funded by taxpayers. So we're going to begin this examination of Lucy's grievance procedure with this document INQ 0003167_01-03, which seems to indicate that we can't see all of the pages from this document. I'll just zoom in a little bit before we begin. This is conducted, as mentioned, by Dr. Chris Green on the 17th of October 2016 with Lucy Cemento, who was an HR specialist who was present for many of these interviews, and Yvonne Griffiths, who was the ward manager at the Countess of Chester. So I'll skip over the introductory portion and just move on to the actual interview itself. So it begins with Chris Green saying, "Have you any evidence that Lucy Letby has done anything wrong in relation to the fatalities on neonatal?" Yvonne Griffiths: "No. There have been lots of reviews and we have a briefing after every death and go over all the facts. We were concerned and asked for an external review, but there was no indication of a specific person. This was at the beginning of the year. We also meet regularly in a network meeting where we share information for learning purposes. Chris Green then asks, can you talk to me about the incident that led to Lucy being temporarily redeployed? Yvonne Griffiths responds, I text Lucy and asked her to come down in that morning as I didn't want her to go to the ward for her own protection. The triplets had been born and then the first triplet had major resus. I went in to support the father and Lucy was in attendance for resus, but that was normal. The night shift allocate babies for the next shift. We have to make sure we have the right skill mix. Lucy was working with another trained member of staff. We transferred the baby to the nursery and there were lots of consultants and doctors there. The next day, Steve Breary said he had concerns but never found any evidence. He said he wasn't happy and we said we would take her off nights, so we did that for a month. The concerns were coming from the medical staff. She's a full-time ITU nurse, so statistically she's going to be around at least one time in 3. And then Chris Green asks, did you explain to her why she was being redeployed? Yvonne Griffiths responds, since then we have decided that following 2 traumatic experiences, it is a good idea to have a break, and so we put it to her that way. There aren't many band 5s. We partly did it for protection for Lucy and partly to pacify those casting aspersions. Chris Green then asks, what protection? And Yvonne says, I didn't want Lucy to be on the ward and Steve Breary to come over saying things to her. And Chris Green then asks, why were their concerns raised? And we then go into a very long answer from Yvonne Griffiths. There were some concerns around commonality. Ariane Powell has a graph that shows which staff were on at what time, which has been reviewed, and in some of the cases Lucy wasn't providing care and the baby had already deteriorated before she was present. Obviously we know this has been established many times, it's been discussed on countless occasions. For example, if a nurse goes on a break, they do everything before they go, but then someone else is assigned in case the bell goes, and so names are attached. Lots of people were around. Steve Breary was concerned and wanted to grasp at anything that might be linked to point the finger. Lucy's documents are excellent, the standard of her work is excellent. Steve Breary was the only one with concerns prior to the triplets. After the second triplet passed away, Lucy was on shift the next day, then annual leave, and then I texted her after that. Steve Breary had heard about the second triplet, and Ariane Powell rang me and said Steve Breary had called and wanted Lucy removed from the unit. Ariane Powell and I didn't feel we had to remove Lucy from the unit. We are a neonatal unit and babies are admitted there for a reason. The consultants all met on the Monday, 4th of July, and Steve Breary voiced his concerns. I was there because Ariane Powell couldn't attend. Steve Breary wanted to go to the chief executive and we said, you can't just do that on a gut feeling. He got Ravi and the anonymous Dr. V on board. It's not like Steve Breary to cause trouble, but we had looked at the information and the only thing seemed to be that she was on duty. Stephen Breary had voiced concerns prior to the loss of the 2 triplets. They said if they didn't go to the chief executive, they would be going straight to the police. We were very uncomfortable. We told them to take their concerns to Lucy, but they were adamant. I think they wanted her fired immediately. I found it very difficult to act on something I didn't believe in. It was a witch hunt. I hate the secrecy. I think they were frightened she would go to the police herself about the allegations. We are supposed to be open and honest. I think they were pacified by Lucy moving to another area and doing the external review, contain and control. So then Chris Green asks, when you text Lucy, did you know she would be meeting Sian? I knew Sian wanted to speak to her, Yvonne Griffiths responds, and that was the easiest way to not make a big deal. I text her as Ariane Powell never does. I didn't know she would be taken off the unit, but I didn't want her to have a sleepless night worrying about it. After the meeting, it was decided she could come back with support, and I arranged for her to come in with Yvonne Farmer, the clinical facilitator, and her union rep, Tony Malaya. Tony Malaya appears in some of the later documents, as does Yvonne Farmer. Then we all went to the meeting. She wasn't informed of suspicions. I have always been uncomfortable knowing more than what she knew, but I was told by Karen Rees and Karen Townsend not to say anything. I believed the plan to undertake competencies and be supervised was to be implemented. Yvonne Farmer and I were to support. We were told it was for all staff. Shell had done advanced training and gone on all the study days. Maybe that's supposed to be she had done advanced training. She came back after the meeting and everyone was frightened of saying the wrong thing. Union rep knew there was more going on and Karen found her a secondment. I didn't feel comfortable her being on the unit in case Steve came in and said something. I didn't know what she was going on secondment until the following Monday. We did question how we would facilitate the suspension and talk with Karen about it. There was only Lucy Letby to be supervised, all others were to do competencies. Deaths can be very difficult. Someone else opted for a secondment for a break and had to take a pay drop. Someone else went to her clinics on a phased return. We are now trying to support people following 2 traumatic experiences. Other people have now retaken competencies and started it now. Some people are on secondment and have different things in place. It has a huge impact on the unit overall, and there has also been sickness. So before I just finish off talking about this, going through the remainder of this document, it's interesting to note that I think this raises a lot of the impact on other nurses on the unit as a whole that may not be immediately obvious to us. But there's a lot of interesting logistical and psychological aspects to it that we're hearing about here. And I must say that I don't think I've covered this previously. I'm sure other nurses are aware of this, and it is a kind of significant aspect of the whole picture and the whole story. I have worked on the unit for 10 years, and I feel we have had equivalent deaths in previous years, but now we have more older mothers, increases in fertility treatment, and less termination of care. Some outcomes are not fantastic, no other concerns from similar in the past. It would be easy for Lucy Letby to walk away, but I hope that she will return to the unit. It is difficult for Lucy Letby and myself, as it's hard when you have lost trust. She's been done wrong. I think it means here she's been done wrong to rather than she's done wrong. I would hate anyone to point the finger with any evidence. She didn't know the allegations. We are looking for a new neonatal lead. Perhaps with progression here will be easier. It will be difficult, however, all the nursing staff are behind Lucy, and she's one of the most experienced Band 5s. I think it was brought up by the review panel, heard a few of the junior doctors on the corridor. It was obvious that people do know, but nobody had said anything. Bernie saw Lucy Letby and asked when she was coming back. It is so hard. We find it really hard, as we have to keep things from our staff. We will be delighted to have her back. We've only seen her 2 or 3 times and told her we are behind her. And finally, Chris Green says, did Lucy Letby know the details of the allegations made by Stephen Breary? I thought she knew what Stephen Breary said. Then Karen Rees said, oh, now she knew everything, and that was only recently. Karen Rees was concerned about her as she had heard the news on Friday. I don't know who actually told her what Stephen Breary was saying. Lucy Letby says she should have stayed on the unit whilst waiting for a review. We are concerned that this was not policy. And then Yvonne's going to say, we know that it isn't about assigning something, but then this document just trails away to nothing. So I am now going to summarise the themes from this document. Number 1, no evidence of wrongdoing. Yvonne Griffiths states that there was no direct evidence that Lucy Letby had done anything wrong in relation to the neonatal fatalities after multiple reviews and briefings. This isn't surprising because the case was passed to Cheshire Police with no evidence. Number 2, Child O prompted redeployment. The trigger for redeployment was problems with the triplets, but specifically the collapses experienced by Child O. We can presume from this that aspiration and ventilation errors on the unit, neither of which were anything to do with Lucy, were nevertheless used as justification to remove her. Number 3, Dr. Stephen Breary is the instigator of this. Dr. Stephen Breary was the foremost communicator of commonality concerns. Number 4, how management handled the gut feeling regarding Lucy. They took Lucy off night shifts. They offered a period of supervision, competencies and support on return. Supervised practice was opposed vehemently by the consultant body. It was arranged for Lucy to meet with clinical facilitators and a union representative. At least one secondment was organised for another staff member, and they were trying to organise one for Lucy as well. Some measures were framed as support after 2 traumatic clinical experiences rather than as disciplinary action. These were justified by management as a containment measure. Number 5, the witch hunt. Yvonne Griffiths expresses criticism of the way that allegations were being handled, describing the situation as like a witch hunt and lamenting the secrecy. Number 6. Poor communication with Lucy. Yvonne Griffiths was not certain exactly what Lucy had been told at different points, indicating poor communication and a lack of transparency. Yvonne also questioned whether it was correct that Lucy was not kept on the unit while awaiting the external review. Number 7. Neonatal nursing staff wanted Lucy back. Yvonne Griffiths comments that the unit would welcome Lucy back and that nursing staff were supportive of her, but that the trust had been damaged and it would be difficult to rebuild without changes. Number 8. Contextualising deaths on the unit. Yvonne Griffiths places recent outcomes in context. She notes similar numbers of deaths in previous years and attributes some changes to demographic shifts. More challenging acuity, older mothers, more assisted conception, fewer terminations. Number 9. Overall tone. The interview conveys frustration, confusion, sadness and anxiety about the handling of allegations, the impact on team cohesion and individual staff welfare, the lack of transparency, the absence of evidence required to justify this, and the difficulty of knowing how much to tell staff or Lucy herself. So the next document we're going to look at was recorded on the very next day, on the 18th of October 2016. Again, we have Dr. Chris Green and Lucy Samenta, and this time Hayley Cooper is the interviewee. Hayley Cooper was Lucy's Royal College of Nursing representative. So we'll move down to the body of the interview, which begins with Hayley Cooper speaking. I don't think she's been asked, no, she hasn't been asked a question, it just begins with Hayley speaking. It was the end of June or start of July. I believe she's referring to 2016. I was made aware as part of the risk team of an internal review. It was mentioned that a nurse had been named. On the 15th of July 2016, I met with Alison Kelly. I'm not sure who SH is. Is SH named here? I'm not entirely sure who SH is. I can't bring it. Oh, is it could be Susie Holt, conceivably. I'm not really sure. And DSS, who's a Royal College of Nursing representative, and was informed about the allegations that had been made by a consultant. Karen Rees had already told me about that Stephen Berry was demanding that the nurse was suspended. I asked for grounds and evidence and then heard that getting the police involved was discussed and that a group of consultants had gone to the executives. Lucy Letby was on holiday and they were still demanding she was excluded following her return. I felt that SH was supportive at this point and wanted to support the individual concerned. So SH must be a nursing figure. I'll have to work out how that is and discuss that at the end of this document. I informed the Royal College of Nursing. I told executives that I would do this. Lucy Letby contacted us following her leave, and TM appointed to support as I had been involved from a risk point of view and had taken notes and organised peer reviews of the x-rays of the babies. Lucy Letby then ended up in my team. I felt this was inappropriate at the time as we were potentially reviewing evidence and gathering data. So I believe TM is Tony Malaya, who's another union representative mentioned in the previous document. External review people came in and told Lucy that she would be interviewed, and I attended with her. Following the review, I think that the penny started to drop and there was more to it than what she had been told. After the meeting, both reviewees expressed their concern following this regarding her health and well-being. At this point, Lucy was very distressed. It was suggested that the panel might suggest an investigation into Lucy Letby, maybe as a way of clearing her name. Tony Malaya then prepared a letter and submitted it. Lucy Letby had some questions, and we confirmed that there were some allegations being made. On the 7th, I believe this is of July, there was a meeting. This was cancelled 15 minutes before. We submitted the grievance that day as we were getting nowhere. Lucy Letby didn't want some things in grievance with regards to the police. There was a meeting on Friday the 9th of September with Alison Kelly, SH and KR. Not sure who they are, but I'll work that out soon. Oh, it's Karen Rees, of course. I have to work out SH still. I wanted an update and they said that they were waiting for the review report and she would stay where she was. I asked for an investigation or reinstatement I received no response to this. There were no grounds for TOR to start an investigation. I had been informed that Stephen Breary had been challenged, but he was adamant he didn't want her on the unit. They were being held to ransom by the consultant. I don't know what they were expecting from the review. I informed the Trust that they have a duty to investigate and felt that they were citing Lucy Letby's welfare as an excuse. It was intimated not to see her on Friday PM in case this caused upset over the weekend. I was a little insulted by this. Lucy Letby has been to occupational health and met with Alison Kelly and SH on the 5th of October. Told the report was not back and that they are keeping her where she currently is. They looked shocked when she told them that she didn't know why she was there. I felt I had no choice but to take her off site and told her what she was being allegedly accused of, harming these babies. I didn't at this point want to tell her the allegations as I didn't feel it was my place, as I knew she would be extremely upset. I don't feel that the Trust has supported Lucy at all. I and Tony Malaya met with Lucy and her parents after the interview meeting, and I can honestly say it was one of the most distressing conversations I have ever had to have. Having to explain to parents what is being alleged about their daughter, I feel was unacceptable, and it is a conversation I will never forget. The Trust should have had this conversation with Lucy. I have also heard that someone from the executive team has said the longer she stays in the risk team, the more likely she might be to leave. I am disgusted at the Trust and how they have treated her. Lucy Letby told me others have been questioned re a relationship with Stephen Breary. Lucy Letby reported this to me and I emailed SH and Alison Kelly for clarification on this. The effect on that girl cannot be understated. All of this has made me extremely guarded and suspicious. At times I have used my Royal College of Nursing email account to communicate as I don't feel I can trust anyone within the hospital. I feel like the executive team want this to go away. So before we go into the summary, I'll just mention that SH, I believe, stands for Sue Hodkinson, who is the Director of People and Organisational Development at the Countess of Chester. So not someone who's come up very much in these videos, not a nursing person involved in a administrative, organisational HR capacity. So I'll just summarise this document of Hayley Cooper being interviewed, although we didn't hear anything from Chris Green, but he presumably would have put questions to her. So point number one in the summary is how Hayley Cooper became aware of the situation. Hayley Cooper learned via the risk team that an internal review was underway and that a nurse had been named in allegations made by a consultant. She met with senior staff and was informed that Dr. Stephen Breary was demanding Lucy's suspension. Number two, actions taken by Hayley Cooper. She asked for the grounds and evidence for the allegations, organised peer reviews of x-rays, took notes related to the review process and informed the Royal College of Nursing. Lucy was on a holiday while these discussions were happening. Number three, external review and immediate impact on Lucy. External reviewers interviewed Lucy. Hayley Cooper attended that interview with her. Following the meeting, Hayley Cooper observed that Lucy became extremely distressed and that the penny started to drop. Lucy began to appreciate the seriousness of the allegations. Number four, communication breakdowns and cancelled meetings. Several important meetings were cancelled and Hayley Cooper noted a failure in communication. Number five, decision to inform Lucy. Hayley Cooper was initially reluctant to tell Lucy the details of the allegations, but ultimately felt she had no choice. Hayley believed the Trust should have handled that disclosure. Number six, view on the Trust. Hayley was critical of the executive's response. She felt the executives were trying to avoid the problem. They had wrongly cited Lucy's welfare as a reason for keeping her away from the unit, and that senior staff were effectively being held to ransom by a consultant, who was Dr. Stephen Breary, demanding exclusion. Number seven, lack of support for Lucy. Hayley stated that she does not feel the Trust supported Lucy adequately. She met with Lucy and her parents after the interview, and Hayley describes having to explain the allegation to Lucy's parents as being an especially distressing and unacceptable responsibility. Staff appeared shocked when Lucy said she did not know why she had been kept away from the unit. Number eight, allegations about relationship with Brewery. Hayley Cooper records that Lucy told her others had been questioning about a relationship with Stephen Brewery. For what it's worth, I don't imbue this with great significance. Gossiping is endemic in most workplaces. Number 9. Personal impact on Hayley Cooper. As a consequence of the way the process was handled, Hayley Cooper reports becoming extremely guarded and suspicious and distrusting colleagues. She describes feeling disgusted at how Lucy was treated. And finally, number 10, call to action. Hayley Cooper challenged the trust to either investigate formally or reinstate Lucy, argued there were no proper terms of reference to begin an investigation at that stage, and repeatedly asked for clarity and action. So finally in this video we're going to look at a third interview that was conducted on the 20th of October, 2 days after Hayley Cooper spoke with those running the investigation. This involves Dr. Chris Green, Lucy Samantha again, and there's Penny Weaver here as a note taker, so hopefully these minutes will be slightly better. And Alison Kelly, who was, I think she was the Director of Nursing and Executive Lead for Safeguarding at the hospital. I believe that's correct. So we'll go into the body of the interview again. By the way, I'm sorry that all of these scans are wonky. That's not my fault. So someone couldn't scan them straight at the thermal inquiry, obviously. So this begins with Alison Kelly, who gave her view of events. In May 2016, Stephen Brewery raised concerns with Alison Kelly and Ian Harvey regarding neonatal mortality rate. In an email from Stephen Brewery, he pinpointed an individual nurse. Of course, we know who that individual nurse was. Alison Kelly flagged this up with Karen Rees, who then went to see Ariane Powell to find out if there were any issues. Ariane Powell was confident there were no issues with the individual nurse. She was a competent nurse and had a good network of friends on the unit, and there were no concerns about her behaviours. In the meantime, Stephen Brewery conducted his own mini-review of the cases and an analysis of staff on duty at the time of deaths. Alison Kelly, Stephen Brewery, Ariane Powell and Anne Murphy met and had an open conversation regarding Stephen Brewery concerns raised on an individual nurse, but also referred to other staff. In a separate meeting, it was decided that a deep dive into clinical cases was needed. And then Chris Green asks, was there any evidence to support Stephen Brewery concerns? Alison Kelly says in response, Lucy Letby was on duty, but not always allocated to the particular baby. There were lots of indirect links being made to one individual, but there was no other rationale for it. There were no significant concerns about her, no red flags, no themes or trends, and the only thing might have been there could have been some escalation in a couple of cases. And then Chris Green says, why do you think Lucy Letby was being singled out? Alison Kelly simply says, I have no idea. Then Chris Green asks her, did anything come out from the report? And Alison Kelly says, confirm nothing significant as regards Lucy. The report is only just in. It is a draft report and we are awaiting a forensic investigation of the medical notes of the cases involved. When the boardroom in brackets incident room was opened and the unit downgraded, Lucy Letby was on holiday. There was pressure put on the executive team from the consultants to know what was happening with Lucy Letby when she returned from annual leave. Then Chris Green says, when Lucy Letby returned from holiday, she received a text from Yvonne with an update about returning to work, but when she arrived was taken to a meeting with Sean Williams. And Alison Kelly responds, yes, to talk about supervised practice, and it couldn't be with me. All I had was that she was the most prevalent person and consultants' concerns around an individual. The original plan was for supervision, but due to staffing levels, this wouldn't be possible, so the decision was made to redeploy Lucy Letby to another department, a non-clinical area, while the review was undertaken. Alison Kelly and Sean Williams did this to protect Lucy Letby. They knew about the consultant's concern, and Lucy Letby was very upset and stressed at the time. We thought taking Lucy Letby out of the environment was the best thing at the time. And then Chris Green says, was there a threat from the consultants? Alison Kelly responds, the consultants were very anxious about it. There was talk about whistleblowing and going to the police. It was talked about at the board if we needed to go to the police, but in the absence of any evidence, what was there to say? We needed to understand the external review and wait for the final report. We also spoke to other trusts who have been in similar positions to us, Stockport for example, and felt we had done the right things. Board level review decided we needed sight of the external review looking at all elements of the service. We didn't pinpoint an individual. Ian Harvey, Tony Chambers and Alison Kelly. So I'm not sure who AK is. That's probably a transcription error because Alison Kelly is speaking. So I'm not sure who AK refers to. Again, I'll try and work this out, but this could be... Well, it says AK again later. I'll try and work out how that is. It's not immediately clear to me. But Ian Harvey, Tony Chambers and AK were given no immediate actions by the external review panel, which gave reassurance we were doing the right thing. The terms of reference for the external review panel were not about an individual, but they were informed of the concerns raised about an individual by Ian Harvey and AK. On the 9th of August 2016, an email was sent to the unit to say Lucy had been seconded for 3 months. Alison Kelly says, I wasn't aware of this email. Chris Green speaks and says, Lucy Letby got the impression the panel didn't know that she'd been redeployed. Alison Kelly says, confirmed that she'd been told. She told the panel on the first day. Chris Green says, Lucy Letby said she struggled to get representation to go to the panel as she was only told on the day. Alison Kelly says, I asked for only 1 or 2 panel members to attend and wasn't aware there had been an issue pulling representation together. Hayley Cooper attended with her. And Chris Green says, Lucy Letby received a letter from the Royal College of Nursing regarding concerns from consultants. Alison Kelly says, in hindsight, we should have told her, but these concerns are not based on any concrete evidence. AK was concerned that the whole unit was safe. AK now has daily oversight of the unit and weekly review. Consultants would say it was about one individual. And then Chris Green asks if Alison Kelly had heard terms angel of death and murderer used. And it had been fed back to her that these terms had indeed been used. Then Chris Green says Lucy Letby has heard the questions, or heard that questions have been raised regarding relationship between Lucy Letby and Stephen Breary. Alison Kelly says these questions never came from us. We never instigated any questions around this. Chris Green says Lucy Letby remains redeployed. Is there a plan to get her back on the unit? Yes, Alison Kelly responds. The plan is to get Lucy Letby back on the unit as our number 1 priority. So it's interesting to know, I just want to say with regard to this, in the immediate aftermath of Lucy being convicted, it was reported by media, presumably because it was stated in the court case, that the system was blinking red and that there was so much concern about Lucy Letby she couldn't possibly have gone back on the neonatal unit. But in fact, for the nursing team, the number 1 priority was to get Lucy back on the unit as quickly as possible. We have to get her back on the unit. Alison Kelly and SHW, it's Sean Williams, I think H is a mistyping. Alison Kelly and Sean Williams now meet fortnightly with Lucy Letby and are meeting at 12 noon today. Chris Green, Lucy Letby asks if the review is not about her, why can't she go back to work? And Alison Kelly confirmed it was a board collective decision. AK feels medical consultants aren't thinking how this is having an effect on Lucy Letby. Then Chris Green says, as regards the external review, it appears that it has arrived and we haven't told Lucy Letby. Karen Rees phoned about the report to ask whether it had arrived, as she had heard that Lucy Letby had been told it had arrived in the trust. In fact, the report had been sent to Ian Harvey that afternoon and he had not had a chance to tell AK. AK wasn't sure how Lucy Letby had found out because even AK didn't know about it. And then Chris Green says Lucy Letby was told she was the first to be supervised. Alison Kelly responds, it was initially intended for supervision for all nursing staff, but due to staffing level, this wasn't possible. Ariane Powell asked to review clinical competencies of all staff, also instructed the medical team, but AK unsure this has happened. Chris Green asks, union has raised, is there anything in writing? Alison Kelly, only initial email from Stephen Breary, from which Alison Kelly had not had any concerns. AK, this is not Alison Kelly. An informal meeting was held with Ian Harvey and AK. Stephen Bury then conducted his own review and it was decided to regroup in a few months' time, but then 2 babies died. Can Lucy Letby get back to work on the unit? Chris Green says. Yes, we'll need lots of support. From AK professional perspective sees no issues. There is an issue around the consultants fueling the situation. It is difficult to keep the team together. The case will be closed when we get Lucy Letby back on the unit. Chris Green queried the 2-week delay in responding to Lucy Letby grievance, which was submitted on the 2nd of September 2016. Alison Kelly, possibly his AK, apologised for the delay and has explained to Lucy Letby the need for organising an external person to review. And then Chris Green confirmed with Alison Kelly that there is no investigation into Lucy Letby herself. So I can't find anyone else from the Countess of Chester with the initials AK. If anyone has any suggestions, please leave them in the comments. Some of the aspects of that document don't quite make sense to me, but I could only find Alison Kelly. So I assume the AK is referencing Alison Kelly, even though it's Alison Kelly speaking. So that doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but there you go. So I'm now going to summarise that document. Let's begin with number 1. Brewery origins of the concern. In May 2016, consultant Dr. Stephen Brewery raised concerns about high neonatal mortality rates and identified an individual nurse as being associated with the cases. Alison Kelly escalated this, but Ariane Powell reported she had no concerns about the nurse's competency or behaviour. Number 2. Brewery review and actions. Brewery carried out his own informal review and a staff on-shift analysis. Meetings were held, but no clear evidence emerged. Number 3, deep dive. Alison Kelly confirmed that draft findings from the unit's internal report did not identify any significant concerns about Lucy Letby. Number 4, redeployment, supervision and support. Lucy was initially contacted by text about returning to work and told to attend a meeting about supervised practice. Lucy was ultimately redeployed to a non-clinical risk team area while the review progressed. Number 5, consultants and escalation. Clinicians expressed a degree of urgency to know what was happening with Lucy, including talk of whistleblowing or going to the police. Alison Kelly commented that in the absence of actual evidence, it was not clear what the police could act on. We should note at this point that the case was passed to the police, still with no evidence, 7 months after this interview was conducted. Number 6, communication issues. There was more evidence of communication issues in this account. Number 7, Lucy's understanding and representation. Alison confirmed that Lucy had the impression that the external panel did not know she had been redeployed and that she was only told about representation arrangements on the day of her panel interview. Alison acknowledged that Lucy should have been better informed about the consultant concerns and in writing. Number 8, perceptions of consultant views. Alison said that some consultants' comments indicated they believed Lucy might be at fault. Comments such as referring to a murderer on the loose had been fed back to her. Questions about whether Lucy had a personal relationship with Brewery were raised, but Kelly said these ideas had no basis and were not instigated by management. So let's summarise what we know from these documents. In May 2016, consultant Dr. Stephen Brewery specifically named Lucy Letby in an email. Alison Kelly, who was the Director of Nursing, immediately escalated the concern to senior colleagues Karen Rees and Ariane Powell. Powell found no prior issues with Lucy Letby, describing her as competent with a strong peer network. Meetings between Kelly, Brewery, Ariane Powell and others followed, but they yielded no clear evidence implicating any individual. The Trust's internal review likewise found nothing significant linking Lucy to any of the deaths. Kelly confirmed the early findings showed no red flags in Lucy's practice and stressed that no formal investigation of Lucy had been launched, while awaiting the forensic case review. In Alison Kelly's words, the deepest concern was the statistical commonality of Lucy's shift patterns, but there was no clinical rationale to single her out. Mid-2016 saw the neonatal unit enter an incident room mode and be downgraded for urgent review. Notably, this occurred while Lucy Letby was on annual leave. Upon her return, Alison Kelly said she received an update text from the Trust and was then asked to attend a meeting about supervised practice. However, the planned ward-based supervision was opposed by consultants. Instead, Lucy was redeployed to a non-clinical risk department for the duration of the review. Alison Kelly and senior managers explained this as being a protective measure, taking Lucy out of the environment to shield her from stress and to placate anxious staff rather than a punitive measure. Throughout this period, senior consultants, particularly Dr. Stephen Breary, were highly agitated. Alison Kelly reported that the clinicians even discussed whistleblowing or calling the police, and that Breary had pressed to alert the chief executive. However, she stressed that in the absence of concrete evidence, there was nothing to say to authorities, and it was necessary to await the external review's conclusions. The Trust also sought guidance from other hospitals, for example Stockport, who had faced similar situations, and the board's review panel ultimately took no action against Kelly or other leaders, reinforcing that the external inquiry was not focused on any individual nurse. Communication breakdowns became apparent. For example, on the 9th of August 2016, an email announcing that Lucy had been seconded for 3 months was circulated without Alison Kelly's knowledge. Lucy herself only learned of the consultant's formal concerns indirectly via a Royal College of Nursing letter and a same-day meeting, and Lucy was upset to find out that she had not been informed earlier in writing. Alison Kelly later acknowledged in hindsight that Lucy should have been told about the nature of the allegations sooner, even though she insisted the concerns were not based on any concrete evidence. Lucy's right to representation became a major issue. Alison Kelly noted that Lucy found arranging union support for her own grievance hearing difficult at such short notice. In the end, only one Royal College of Nursing representative, Hayley Cooper, accompanied Lucy to the panel interview. The limited representation and lack of prior notice added to Lucy's distress. In every review and meeting, Alison Kelly emphasised that no clinical evidence had surfaced against Lucy. The only apparent link was that as a full-time nurse she statistically appeared on shifts more often, a commonality that the consultants had picked up on charts, but none of Lucy's documented care was ever deficient. All agreed that Lucy's ward notes and competencies were excellent, and no themes or trends of malpractice were found. Consequently, Alison Kelly treated the redeployment and supervision as precautionary reassurance, not disciplinary action. Safety remained a priority on the unit. Alison Kelly assured that the neonatal unit was being closely overseen. She took on daily oversight of the unit and instituted weekly mortality reviews. The overarching view was that until and unless the independent review proved otherwise, Lucy should be supported, not blamed. Kelly was aware that some staff had used extreme language. She said she was told terms like angel of death or murderer had been whispered on the unit, but stressed that such talk came second-hand and was not part of the Trust's assessment. Similarly, rumours that Lucy had a personal relationship with Dr. Breary were mentioned, but Kelly denied that management ever raised these points, saying those ideas had no basis and were not initiated by the hospital. Kelly made it clear that the top priority was getting Lucy back on the ward once the external review was complete. By the interview date, she and her deputy were meeting Lucy fortnightly, and she emphasised that the decision to keep Lucy away was a collective board decision, not a management whim. She observed that some consultants seemed to not fully appreciate how hard the process had been on Lucy herself, and reiterated the need to balance staff anxieties with the nurses' well-being. Alison Kelly and her team consistently opposed any implication of guilt. Kelly emphasised that all actions, redeployment, support plans, secondments were undertaken to protect Lucy and the unit's staff during a deeply stressful time. She deemed the concerns as largely gut feelings of the clinicians without proof, and portrayed the management response as one of caution and containment rather than accusation. Hayley Cooper, who worked in risk and safety, corroborated this. She learned in late June 2016 about the internal review and the consultant's specific allegations against Lucy. She requested the evidence for these claims and arranged independent peer review of relevant radiographs. Importantly, Cooper contacted the Royal College of Nursing to inform them of the situation with the support of the hospital executives. Her role was to ensure any grievances were properly addressed. As the external review panel interviewed Lucy, accompanied by Hayley Cooper, those present observed Lucy become visibly upset once she understood the gravity of the claims that had been made against her. Cooper and colleagues reported major concerns for Lucy's mental well-being at that point. Staff later told the inquiry they were shocked that Lucy herself did not even know why she'd been kept away from the ward and were worried about her health. In the face of delays and confusion, meetings were sometimes cancelled abruptly and staff grievances were filed. Cooper described senior leadership as evasive. For example, when she pressed for either a formal investigation or Lucy's reinstatement, she received only the response that the trust was waiting for the external review report. She grew increasingly distrustful of management's handling, accusing them of wanting the matter to go away and using Lucy's welfare as an excuse. In the end, Cooper said she had to explain the allegations to Lucy herself, a task that she felt should have been conducted by the trust. Yvonne Griffiths, the neonatal ward manager, provided a similar picture. She reported that the unit had conducted multiple internal case reviews after each death, plus regular multi-hospital mortality review meetings, and none had ever pointed to any evidence of wrongdoing. When asked if she had any evidence of wrongdoing in relation to Lucy, Griffiths replied bluntly no, only that staff had been concerned and requested an external review. Griffiths explained the key trigger for Lucy's redeployment was an incident in June 2016 involving triplets. After the first triplet's severe collapse, she intentionally texted Lucy and asked her not to come back to work for her own protection. The next day, with multiple consultants present and another triplet having died, Griffiths agreed with Powell to relieve Lucy of night shifts for about a month. As Griffiths put it was partly to give Lucy a break after two traumatic experiences and partly to pacify those casting aspersions against her. Griffiths acknowledged discomfort with how secretive the process had become. She described feeling as if it were a witch hunt and hated that staff were being kept in the dark. Several senior managers even told her not to share details with the team. She said she repeatedly struggled with knowing more than Lucy herself while being told to say nothing. Management framed the removal as a support measure, saying it was for all staff after traumatic cases, but Griffiths knew the reality was that the consultants had zeroed in on Lucy. She noted that by moving Lucy off the ward temporarily, the executives had in effect contained and controlled the situation, calming the consultants without outright accusing Lucy. Griffiths also reported that team morale suffered greatly with increased sickness and fear of saying the wrong thing. She regretted that trust had broken down between management and staff. She emphasised that most colleagues had rallied around Lucy, saying we would be delighted to have her back, and insisting she was one of their best and most experienced nurses. Griffiths put the circumstances in perspective. She had seen similar numbers of baby losses in previous years, attributing some of the rise to older mothers and assisted conception not staffing, and no one had ever been singled out before. Looking forward, she said the ward needed a new neonatal lead and meaningful process improvements to rebuild trust. She hoped Lucy would return, but lamented after this ordeal, "We have lost trust, a situation that would be difficult to mend without transparent change." In summary, all interviewed managers agreed that no evidence was ever found implicating Lucy Letby. Actions taken, such as redeploying her, supervising staff, and engaging regulators, were portrayed as precautionary and aimed at preserving patient safety and staff welfare. A recurring theme was that of managers caught between clinicians demanding swift action and governance protocols requiring actual evidence. Many witnesses noted that communication was poorly handled, for example, staff not knowing what to tell Lucy, cancelled meetings, and rumours circulating which ultimately damaged team trust. The key themes that have already been established repeat themselves throughout these documents: Breary driving the victimisation of Lucy, no evidence being presented, the nursing team being perplexed about the allegations and universally supportive of Lucy, particularly her nursing managers. An extraordinary situation that has been allowed to develop, with then the bungling Cheshire Police and highly suspect Dr. Dewi Evans being the icing on this unpalatable cake. So that concludes our first examination of the grievance procedure of Lucy Letby at the Countess of Chester. This will be a multi-part series, as there are over 40 documents from the thorough inquiry on Lucy's grievance procedure. I may not examine all of these because some are relatively uninteresting emails, but I will certainly look at all of the documents that include substantial information. Finally, I'd just like to say a quick thank you for your support in 2025, particularly in December when I was very busy and the quality of some of my output was not up to my usual standards. But I had a deadline to meet, and I finished the final draft of my book on New Year's Eve, so I will now be free to make more and better YouTube content in 2026. I'm not sure what 2026 will look like. All I can say is that the release of my book is planned for June at the latest. At that time, and probably before then, I'll be doing lots of different stuff. I don't know what that will entail yet. It could be many public appearances, but I'll keep everyone posted, and I may be able to release some of that on this channel. I want to emphasise that I will always give my best to deliver for those that have supported me and to play a small role in righting this enormous wrong. I will give everything that I have. And with that being said, best wishes for 2026. It will be an important year for Lucy Letby.